I'm a cheap photographer, and most people who know me as a pretty cheap person as well. Now, I'd rather they say resourceful, but realistically, I understand that for the last 12 years of my career as a photographer, this cheapness, this frugality is the reason that I've been able to continue as a photographer. So I want to share a few of those secrets that I've figured out for myself so that you can be a photographer, maybe a full-time photographer, for the length of your career. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back. My name is Sergio. I'm a commercial photographer here in Victoria, BC, and one of the anecdotes that I've been holding on to and I've been thinking about for these last 10, 12 years of my career has been waste not, want not. Now, the basis of that idiom is if you use something and you use it consistently and you abuse it, you will constantly want to use it. If you're constantly draining your income and you're thinking about how you can spend the money that comes in constantly, you will always want to continue doing that. Same with camera equipment, same with many other different parts of photography. If you abuse always looking at the latest and greatest specs or trying to be, it needs to be 6K 120, or I need to have all of these features or else it's not worth it, or else I'm not good enough, or else I'm not at a certain level, you're going to be digging and burying yourself in a hole. As a photographer, as someone who wants to make money in photography, especially in this very expensive craft, this expensive field that the hammers we use are much more expensive than regular hammers, you're going to, at the very least, need to lower your expenses. So if you're coming at this job or at this hobby as someone with a consistent job, someone who is getting paid every Thursday, every other Thursday, even once a month, like whatever consistency you have to now say goodbye to. Every time I've made money as a photographer, I've always just thought about, okay, when is the next time I'm making this money? If you're spending what comes in, now you have to worry about making it again. The less you need to spend, the less you need to make. I've always seen money coming in not as a means to get the things that I want. Well, maybe, but the things that I want are time. Money, to me, is longer time in order to keep doing this thing. If it costs me $3,000 a month, let's say it costs me $100 a day to survive and live and whatever. Well, if I make $3,000, that's 1 month. If I have $10,000 ahead, that's 3 months of expenses ahead of time. It's not thinking about, oh man, that means I can go buy a GFX tomorrow. That means that I can live for the next 3 months and still be a photographer. And if I can have multiple sources of income that are doing that to me, then I can create this year or this career or this, these next 20 years of my career as a photographer. Understanding how much you need to spend in order to be happy, be content. I'm not telling you have to spend $4 a month and you have to be as cheap as possible and you have to be the most frugal person ever and never enjoy anything and never go on vacation and don't spend any of your money. I'm just saying that it's hard to make money as a photographer, especially if you're comparing it to working a regular, consistent job that you can just turn up every Monday at 9 a.m. and you know you're going to get paid. If you put in your time on that chair, no matter what it is that you're doing, you're still getting paid. That does not happen in photography. So you can't spend the same way as you were or as you want to as your office friends or as the people who work in these regular stable jobs. Why does my other friend have a house and a car? Why does this person have 4 dogs? How can this person afford all of these trips? What is it that you can afford as a photographer? It's the time off. It's the time from not working for people. It's the ability to wake up late in the morning. It's the ability to never have an alarm if you don't want one. It's the ability to start a YouTube channel if you want to. That's what we're getting paid in as photographers, at least at the very start. Maybe, and that you might get lucky with a couple big gigs here and there in your first couple years of making money as a photographer. But to have the stability and the consistency of a full-time career as a photographer, it takes time. I've shared this in many other videos. It just takes time. If you haven't seen the 4-year rule, go watch that video and understand that if you're in your first couple years, it's not going to be what you think it is. And if you leave a job, let's say, to pursue this career as a photographer, just know that your whole life, I don't want to say your whole life, but like the way you think about work, the way you think about a business is going to be completely different. Oh man, I had to work an extra hour. I did overtime for these guys. I did all of that is like the bare minimum to be a photographer. You need to be stressed out. You need to be almost strung out as a photographer just to break even, just to be at a level where you can be like, oh, I'm actually surviving and I'm not just barely making ends meet. Like it's tough to make as much money as your regular job counterparts, even if it's your regular, minimum wage friends. It's tough. It's definitely not the easiest thing to do. But there are a lot of benefits in being a photographer and being cheap. The cheaper you can be, the more frugal you are as a photographer, the longer you can do this for. Of course, if you make more money, you can spend more and you can have more savings. You can spend more in your stock portfolio. Whatever it is that you do, it's important to, continue growing your business. I'm not saying that you should be content with 20 grand a year, but if you can spend 20 grand a year and keep your expenses down, even if your income goes up, understand that there are ebbs and flows in this business and that not every month is Black Friday and not every year is going to be 2019 or not every year is going to be 2020 either. So just keep that mentality of like, okay, I'm going to stretch myself out for the next 20 years. This is what I want to do for 20 years. If I have a good year, it's going to help pay for the bad year. If I have a good month, it's going to pay for the bad month. Don't like, oh, I made a bunch of money this month so I can go buy a bunch of things because next month is definitely going to be the same. Be careful. Be cheap. Be resourceful. And I don't know, maybe a rule of thumb, don't spend something unless you have double the income for it. Maybe if you want to buy something, make sure you have it saved 2 times so that you don't spend money and then make sure that it doesn't work, or no, I have to return it, or now I'm out of money, or now I have a hard time making it to the end of the month. And then if you're ever in that situation, if you're buying things on credit, if you're putting yourself under to be a photographer, it's not worth it. You're not there yet. Keep being cheaper. Keep your job. Keep a regular paying job in order to fund this photography hobby until it's so busy that it needs to be your full-time job. There's no shame in that. There's no blueprint in that, like, oh, I can't call myself a photographer if I don't do it full-time, or I can't be a pro if I'm not doing it full-time. If it's not the only thing I'm doing, then I'm not a photographer. Like, that's not the case at all. It's expensive to be a photographer. It takes a lot of money and time in order to build all the gear that you need, in order to make sure that you can be consistently good at being a photographer. Like, all those things take time, and the longer it takes, the more money it takes. But the less you spend, the less you need to make. Everything I've made, other than like that crappy little delivery job that I had, has been through photography. So spending money has always been terrifying to me. I've always been so scared to spend because I don't know when the next time it's coming in. And sure, now after 10 years, finally, after 10 years, I'm able to take a little bit of a breather and be like, oh, okay, now if I can say no to this person because I have enough of yeses from other clients that have helped me pay a few months ahead of time or a few years ahead of time, or I have enough in stocks to do this, I'm able to take a step back now. But it's not until I started this YouTube channel that I had any sense of comfort and stability in this job. I am still very cheap and still very frugal because of the 8 years of trying to make it as a photographer, the years of not knowing where my next paycheck was coming from. But working on $1,000 a month or whatever it is, like working on a smaller budget helps you know what you can actually achieve. Like you don't need to make 10 grand a month to be happy. You don't need to make anything to be happy. You need to just be happy about what it is that you're doing. If you can lower your expenses to the point where you're happy waking up and going to bed at night, it's good enough. You don't need to have 4 Ferraris in the garage. You don't need to have every other camera under the sun. We want them, sure, but what is a want? What is a need? Waste not, want not. Stop desiring everything around you, and you'll stop spending all of that money. Know what makes you happy. Have a baseline, and I get it. It's easier to have more money and to be happier with more money-ish. Like, it sounds on paper like if you have $400,000, it's going to be a much easier life than if you have $40,000. But if you can be content at 40,000, you'll be way more content once you hit 400 than if you're uncontent at 40, uncontent at 100, not content at 200. You're always spending what you have. You always need more. You always want more. We get used to our lifestyles. We get surrounded by people with different lifestyles. We're trying to compete with this and that. Know who you are. Know what makes you happy. Find your baseline and live there. Chill there. Even when the months are good, you still chill where you are. This isn't a regular job in that, like, oh, I got a raise this month and now I'm always going to be making this much more money. I can spend all of this money on takeout. No. Even if it's a $15, $20 thing, that adds up over months, over years, over time. And if you spent 10 grand on takeout last year, well, why don't you just look at how many shoots that $10,000 was? And was it worth the convenience of getting the food or getting this when you could have spent 3 grand on making it yourself? I just want you to be a little bit more careful with how much you're spending. And I understand that, like, you know, on the phone day, and I work in advertising. I get it. That's what we do. We make you believe that you need to get this thing. But you don't. You really don't. If you have a camera and you have a lens, maybe a specialist lens and a generalist lens, maybe 1 or 2 flashes, maybe a tripod, after that, it's all gravy. Like, I know it's hard to listen to me say that when I have a whole studio of equipment behind me, but I can tell you that everything I have here has been bought, like, on sale or on clearance, has been gifted to me, or I found it on the side of the streets, or I jerry-rigged something, or a lot of it as, like, you know, I've used these V-flats that are just like these pieces of insulation from Home Depot that I painted black on one side and white on the other. I've always been frugal and cheap and trying to get it done the proper way without spending too much money, because it's hard to make money. Even if I'm charging $1,000, I'm losing 30% of that to taxes. I'm losing half of that to assistance and to getting there and to everything else. So every $100 is tough to make. So every $100 should be tough to spend. That's all I want you to take away from this video, is just be a little bit more frugal, be a little bit more mindful, and it's okay, because the lifestyle we get to live as photographers is much more, you know, wealthy than a job that you hate from 9 to 5, where as soon as it's 5:01, all you're thinking of is spending all the money you made so you can feel better about your crappy day. That's not what we're in this for. I get it, it's expensive to buy a couple cameras, but after that, just enjoy the lifestyle, enjoy the life of being a photographer. Thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you liked it. Leave a comment if you did. Maybe subscribe if you haven't. There's a lot of you who watch these videos, and I know that even I watch a lot of YouTube channels where I'll be watching someone for like 3, 4, 5 months, and then I'm like, oh wait, I'm not even subscribed. All right, well, whatever. I know YouTube will continue feeding you my videos if you watch the videos, but if you subscribe, it lets me know that you're watching these videos. So thank you very much if you do. See you in a couple days. Take care. Later.